Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our class. We are in week 4 talking about leadership and social influence. This is on our agenda for today. We will talk about groupthink, which your book covers. I wanted to dive into that a little bit more, and also cover the topic of social capital. You're halfway through the class. Congratulations. You've made it. I know many of you all of you are working so hard every single week, and I'm really thrilled to be able to continue on in this class with you. So hang in there, and if you have any questions, you know I'm just an email, phone call, or a text message away. Okay, for today's faith integration, I want you to take a look at this picture. And no, this is not a hole in the ground, even though that's what it might look like. This is actually a visual depiction of what a roof would have looked like in the time of Jesus. So this is a roof that's been broken through, obviously, but a roof maybe to a home or to another kind of building. Today I want to talk to you about the section of scripture found in Luke 5. And this is the account of a paralyzed man who is on a mat and his friends who very diligently and cleverly figure out a way to get him in front of Jesus. You see, Jesus was meeting in a house and sharing his teachings, and there was a group of people there called the Pharisees. The Pharisees did not really care for Jesus because they found that many things that he said were blasphemous or against God. And the Pharisees very much felt that they had the corner on the market when it came to religious teaching and understanding the character and nature of God and what would please God and what would displease God. So Jesus is teaching, and as he's teaching, this group of friends begin to lower the man through the roof on his mat in front of Jesus. And Jesus looks at the man and says, "Friend, your sins are forgiven." Now, this is probably the most outrageous thing that Jesus could have said to the man at that moment, especially considering present company. We're talking about those religious leaders that certainly would have found what Jesus said to be complete blasphemy, complete speaking out against God and God's abilities. And Jesus said to them, "Why are you thinking those things in your hearts?" To the Pharisees. And he said, "But just so you know that the Son of Man has authority here on earth to forgive sins, he says to the paralyzed man, I tell you, get up, take your mat, and go home." And the man did just that. He got up. He was no longer paralyzed. He was able to go home. And the scripture tells us he went home praising God. And a lot of people also were amazed at what Jesus did. And they said, we've seen God do, or we've seen remarkable things today. Now, a lot of people in this account focus on the man with the mat and Jesus. And these are extraordinary things, this miracle that happened. It's no small thing. But what I want to focus on today is the group behavior of the friends who decided that they were going to, against the odds, get their friend in front of Jesus to see if Jesus could perhaps do what he was known for best, which was to heal and to forgive. There was quite a stigma attached with being differently abled, certainly in the time of Jesus. And I want us to think about the mat, though, as a symbol. As a symbol of something that someone perhaps needs community to surround them about. A mat could be a lot of different things. We could think about an invisible mat, maybe something that someone struggles with that's not easily seen, or maybe is really misunderstood. So for today's faith integration, I'd like you to think about how you could pick up the corner of another person's mat in a group setting. Thinking about the mat as a symbol, right? What kind of invisible mats do people deal with that might affect their group interaction? And how can we have compassion? How can we be the kind of leader that leads groups and leads people in a way that carries them to the kind of outcome that they need? So things to think about today in our faith integration. For this Sunday, in your group project, you are going to be working on your outline. Now, this is a rough sketch here on your screen. This is, of course, also on Canvas of what needs to be included in your final product, your paper, and your presentation. If you use this outline and really focus on the main points that are covered here, you will cover all the bases when it comes to this project. And as you build out your outline and turn in your outline, what you'll get back from me is some feedback on, hey, you're on the right track, you're covering all the right things, or I might say, consider adding this, or you're missing that, or maybe you're focusing on this and you don't need to so much. So again, this is another iteration of the project that's meant to help you get closer to your goal, and also meant to help your team be very organized as you divvy up and conquer the various aspects of the writing that needs to be done. If in the construction of this outline your team has any questions, please do let me know and I'm happy to help. All right, we're talking about the model of small group interaction. This week we're going to talk a little bit about some of the interaction roles and different ways that groups can function or dysfunction together. I have a little video for you on Canvas on conformity and groupthink. This is from the classic television show Candid Camera. Not sure if any of you have seen old episodes of that, or maybe you grew up watching some of, there's been a couple different ways that they've done Candid Camera. If you haven't seen it before, think about it as less intense, punked. Basically playing pranks on folks and trying to catch it on camera. So watch this video and then come on back and we can talk a little bit about it. So if you watch the video, you saw that folks were getting in the elevator and other people were being told how to act. And eventually those people that weren't in on the joke went along with how the other people were acting. This is a really good example of what groupthink looks like. Sometimes you know what's happening in groupthink. You know that everyone's decided we're going to do this same thing together. And other times you just kind of get swept up in it. And so today I want to talk about what groupthink is and what the symptoms of groupthink are. Now, groupthink is essentially this mode of thinking that people engage in when they're deeply involved in a cohesive or all-together in-group. And this is when the members of the group really want to have unanimity. That's a hard word to say. They want togetherness, and they want the togetherness so much that they're willing to override any other kinds of dissent or other opinions or things of that sort. And so any alternative courses of action or other ideas won't be widely accepted when you have groupthink. So here's some of the factors of groupthink. I have a little cartoon there to illustrate it. We need more dissenting opinions. Absolutely, sir. We agree 100%. So there's three kinds of types or three factors of groupthink that we'll see in this issue. Hang on, I'm going to pause for some water. Okay. So first we have overestimation of the group. This illusion of invulnerability. We are amazing. We know what we need to know, and we can do what we need to do, and we don't need any other outside influence or help or opinions. And often in this type 2, or type also, I should say, type 1 also, there's this belief that the group is very moral and just in their cause. So there's an almost unquestioned belief in this group has got it together. We know what we're doing, and what we're doing is very important and very right and very just. So that's the type of overestimation. In type 2, in groupthink, we'll see closed-mindedness. And so the group will rationalize to discount any sort of warnings. No, we're right because, the XYZ. And they'll also stereotype the views of their enemy leaders. So any out group would be viewed as almost too evil or too wrong to negotiate or to consider. Extremely closed-minded. Type 3 of the factors of groupthink is also these pressures towards uniformity or unanimity. So you'll see that there will be self-censorship of any doubts or deviation from the group consensus. So if one person does decide, like, hey, I'm gonna I think I need to speak up. I'm not too sure about this. There's a lot of pressure and censorship of no, don't speak up against the group. You know that we're right and we're headed in the right direction. There's also this emergence of what we could call self-appointed mind guards. And these folks will protect the group from any adverse information. So if any information that goes against what the group thinks comes into play, these mind guards will discount it and try to keep it at bay, try to keep it outside of the group. Again, when we're looking for factors of groupthink, when we're looking for kind of characteristics of what we might see when we encounter groupthink, it's these three types we really want to focus on. So overestimation, closed-mindedness, and pressures towards uniformity. Well, how do we break out of groupthink, or how do we avoid groupthink altogether? And again, I like this illustration. I think it's really helpful to have a visual on what we can do to avoid groupthink. Really, consensus is what the experts say, or meaningful agreement is a way to avoid or to combat groupthink. And so when we find that participants support the decision reached by the group, or at least can live with it, we've got consensus. When each member can say, I believe other members understand my point of view, I believe I understand other members' points of view, and whether or not I prefer this decision, I support it because it was arrived at openly and fairly, and it's the best solution for us at this time. So to look for or to formulate or come to a space where you've got consensus, you can do a few things. One is that experts actually say to resist taking votes. And you would think that, show of hands, how many people think like this would help you reach consensus? That's actually not the case, is what a lot of experts say. They say that taking votes puts people into adversarial positions. There's clear winners and clear losers. And that the folks that publicly proclaimed their lack of agreement with others might have a harder time coming over to the other side because, again, it's viewed as losing or being on the losing side. You can also consider a decision rule within your group. So you can say, okay, 70%. If at least 70% of the group members agree, then we'll go all in, recognizing that 100% is very hard to come by. And again, you don't want to have that pressure to have to push that other 30% over the line. And if you have someone on the fence when it comes to consensus, you can ask the question, what is the one thing you could change that would bring you to support this decision? So these are all things to think about when it comes to how to combat groupthink. Now that we've talked about it, I'd like you to spend some time on the discussion boards this week talking about groupthink. And so I have some questions here for you. I'd like you to consider this. In hindsight, have you been a part of groupthink in the past? And if so, what were the results and the consequences? Now, for all these questions, if you can come up with examples of groupthink within your profession, I think that would be the most helpful. However, if you don't have an example there or can't really wrap your mind around where that would be relevant or applicable, you can certainly choose another context. Also think about what kinds of groups are vulnerable to groupthink. What personal or institutional factors might influence conformity? And how could groupthink be dangerous in your profession in particular? And then finally, I'd like you to think forward. In the future, as a leader of a group, what might you do to mitigate the factors? And those are what we just talked about on the last slide. Overestimation, closed-mindedness, and pressures towards uniformity. What could you do to mitigate those factors that contribute to groupthink? How could you preempt them or keep them make them a non-factor actually? What kind of consensus building could you do? So you're going to think about those questions and then write a reflection on that. And then, of course, respond to 2 classmates before Saturday. Excuse me, had the dates wrong. All right, let's also look at, I'm trying to click ahead and it's not working. Let's see. There we go. Let's look at social capital. This is the other thing I wanted to talk with you about today. And as we think about social capital, I'd like you to do a little exercise. So grab a piece of paper. Hold on, I'm going to grab my handy dandy whiteboard. And I would like you to write the names of the last 12 people you talked to or corresponded with. Maybe not family, not related to you, all over a paper. So, okay, I'm going to do this. I had some students in my office earlier today. I had some friends, some colleagues. Let's see. Okay, well, I'm just going to come up with a few for sake of time so you're not sitting here watching me. Watching me write all of these. Think about these people that you've had contact with. And then, okay, so here's my example. We're talking about social capital. Draw a line from one person to another if they know each other. So ideally this would be in another color, but you know. Okay. Here's my wild looking lines. Did you introduce these people? Oh, I guess, yeah, they know each other too. So I would say for Lindsay and Linda, they're my colleagues. They knew each other, and actually Lindsay introduced me to Linda. These students know these because they're professors. My friends Sarah and Noemi. Noemi is also a colleague of mine and a dear friend. They know each other because I introduced them to each other. So think about that. And have you helped any of these people find resources or a job, or have they helped you? Well, yes, Lindsay actually is someone who brought me into the History and Political Science department here at Point Loma. So certainly she helped me find a job. These students, one of them I worked with on helping with an internship, and another also, looked at ideas with an internship. So that's job related, right? Or have they helped you? If so, you know what social capital can do. And so social capital is actually these links and resources of those you're connected to, as well as the resources of the people those people are connected to. So social capital is all about these linkages, these shared values, these understandings, and it helps folks to be able to trust each other and to work together. And in social capital, we have these three categories of linkages, or bonds, and bridges that can help us to, again, build on our connections in relation to living and working together in society. And so what we would consider to be bonds are the family and close friends that we have, people who might be within our same cultural circles or with our same sort of background. Bridges would be more distant friends, colleagues, associates, folks that maybe you associate with, but you may or may not have at your birthday party. Might be the best way to think about it. And then linkages are considered people or groups that are further up or down the social ladder that you have contact with. So when you look at your list, think about them in terms of bonds, bridges, and linkages. And if you want to do even more kind of breaking things down, you can even write by them. Are they a bond, a bridge, or a linkage to help you really cement those ideas? Well, why does it matter that we build our social capital? Again, research tells us that relationships and networks play a pretty significant role in our lives. In the individual attributes that we love to claim as kind of our own, things like natural talent, intelligence, education, effort, or even luck, we find that there's actually a role that relationships and networks play in each one of them. For example, natural talent can be genetic, yes, but who helped to nurture that natural talent that you have? If you are naturally gifted at drawing for something, which is an example that I am not naturally gifted at. Who bought you your first set of drawing pens, or your pad of paper, or maybe helped you with lessons, or encouraged you to take an art class? Those sorts of things. Intelligence. Malleability of intelligence illustrates the difference between the brain and the mind. Everyone's born with a physical brain, but a human mind develops actually through relationships, and relationships to information and to others. You could kind of go down the list. And when you do that, you understand that yes, individual effort and even luck in some senses does make a difference when it comes to what we can do and be, but also social capital is really important. And a little bit of research will help us to understand how important it is that we have many ties in social capital and that we develop and cultivate relationships for social capital. Mark Granovetter in 1973 published this piece of research called The Strength of Weak Ties. And basically what he noted was that weak ties were those bridges that allow us to disseminate and get access to information that we might not otherwise have access to. Connections through weak ties could be things like, again, folks that we work with, or someone that we work with knows. So a colleague of a colleague, or an associate of a colleague, that sort of thing. If you think about LinkedIn, for example, if you're on LinkedIn, you have people that you know that are those first connections, and then you have folks that are maybe second or third level connections that you don't know them directly, but you know someone who knows them. So what Granovetter says is actually it's very important that we have a lot of weak ties, that strong ties are important for personal, community, that we have family and close friends, and that we have people that we do life with on the regular. But it's also very important to have many weak ties so that we have these associations. These are the ways in which we find jobs. We find out information about, educational programs, or a home that's for rent, things like that. That the more weak ties we have, the more access to important information that we would have as well. So why would it be important to have weak ties? These are things I want you to think about. What kind of information do you think can be shared that could be helpful in strengthening social capital? And what could strong social capital do for you and your coworkers at your workplace? Social capital matters because all of these things listed here, information, job leads, power, influence, emotional support, cooperation, trust, these can all be achieved and built up through social capital. And again, when we talk about that individual, that self-made man or woman, is success truly an individual matter, or does it in part have to do with the kinds of connections and social capital that you have built up over time? The truth is that pay, promotion, accomplishments are all tied up in part by the kinds of personal and business networks that folks have built over time. So I want you to think about that for your own personal self, but also within your network of fellow health professionals and folks within your industry. How can you build up social capital? And what are the kinds of goals that you have? Again, this is sort of like a coaching moment. It does have to do with group behavior, but also something I want to encourage you in is to continue to build up your social capital, because you might have a goal to be a charge nurse, or be over a unit, or maybe to even work up in the administration in a hospital, or to be a professor. Maybe you want to continue your education, get your PhD, and come and teach future nurses what they would need to know in order to be successful. All of those goals can be attained, I would say, in a more clear path as you build social capital, as you make connections, and put yourself out there and help people know that you are interested in future opportunities. So that's our weekly challenge for this week. What step can you take this week to build on your existing social capital? What's one thing you could do to reach out to someone? And again, as we look ahead, I want you to be working on your group project. Make sure you're diligent early in the week to get a hold of your group members. Also, there's a mid-course survey on Canvas that I would love for you to take. It's just a few minutes of your time. I want to know what's going well for you in the class and what are some areas that I can help you in. And as always, reach out to me if you have any questions. Thanks so much, and I'm excited to hear from you, and I hope you have a great week. We'll see you soon.